Hey folks, Norb here. I got the Apple AirPods Max about 6 months ago, and I wanted to give a picture of what it's been like to live with these things. In my original review, I gave these a pretty high rating. If you haven't watched that yet, the link's above my head and in the description below. The big takeaway was that I thought that these were fantastic, and that if I could only have one pair of headphones, it would be the AirPods Max. After 6 months, I don't think that anymore. Look, I'm gonna go over a lot of info, so if you're in a hurry or have a specific question, use the links in the timeline or the description below to jump to the parts of the video that interest you. If I don't answer it there, hit me up in the comments below. Speaking of comments, quick shout out to In Your Eyes for his comment in my introduction to Bluetooth codecs. He says, "Thank you so much for clearing this up for me and for everyone else." In Your Eyes, thank you for your comment. I'm very much humbled by it. I'm looking to build a positive tech community which includes you, so leave a message below and I may feature it in a future video. So now just some disclosures. Note that I purchased these by myself and that this video is not sponsored. Here are my quick takeaways. First, if you are not an Apple user, don't get these. The end. If you are an Apple user, I still maintain that these are an excellent value. They sound good, they feature a phenomenal user experience, and they have solid features. Again though, the more Apple products and services you use, the better. However, if you're only going to use them with one device at a time, for example, you only have an iPhone, and if you're not a big fan of Siri or you don't use Apple Music, or none of that, you'll want to consider less expensive options. Even at the same price, you can find better sounding options, for example, and I would very seriously consider them on equal footing with the AirPods Max. Also, if you do a lot of traveling, I heavily advise against these. They are not at all good for travel for a number of reasons. I'll cover that in a later section in the video. And while the power management is still decent, it's not as great as I thought at first. At Apple, these sell for $550, which has made a lot of people balk, especially since the proprietary auxiliary cable, this little thin, embarrassingly thin little thing, is an extra $40, and you need it in order to even approximate lossless sound. Just a reminder, if you find this video useful, please remember to hit the thumbs up button and hit subscribe and the bell to be reminded of new videos. If you already have, thank you. Let's kick this off with sound. In short, these sound good, and unless you're an audiophile, you will probably love them. If you are an audiophile, well, you can get close to the audiophile sound when you use the auxiliary cable. They're not the best in their class, but they have a pretty solid sound quality and great staging. They're a little bit sibilant, and the lows are a little weaker than I like. In short, I wish it had more body. Still, on this front, I would recommend them. There are a few areas we need to talk about here: music, movies, calls, spatial audio, and lossless audio. Now, I'm being nitpicky here. At $550, nitpicky is not unfair. Let's start with the elephant in the room: lossless audio. No, these can't technically output lossless audio even with this proprietary cable. Technically. That's because you can connect the AirPods Max to devices playing lossless and high-res lossless recordings, and these can handle the input just fine. However, because you have an analog to digital conversion on the cable, the playback is not technically completely lossless. All else being equal, the overall quality of sound wouldn't be any notably different even if the sound wasn't converted from digital to analog back to digital. There will be some loss of information there, but you being a human having human ears probably are not going to be able to tell the difference. The other elephant, maybe a smaller pygmy elephant, is the spatial audio. This one I'll separate into two categories: music and movies. I love using the AirPods Max for movies. Not only is the sound great, but the spatial audio really immerses you in the experience. Provided you're watching from a supported source like your iPhone or iPad playing an app that supports this, it's great to be able to turn your head towards where the sound is supposed to be coming from relative to the source. Speaking of Apple devices, Apple TV users on tvOS 15 will be able to take advantage of spatial audio. The same thing with users on macOS Monterey. Also, apps that support it include Netflix, Disney+, Hulu, HBO Max, Plex, Peacock, Discovery+, Paramount+, and of course, Apple's TV apps. Moving on to music. It felt like a gimmick here at best. Music with spatial audio is fun to listen to. It feels like you're in the middle of the music. But with these, I really couldn't tell the difference between spatial audio and a good stereo instrumentation separation. By the way, if you're really keen on EQing them because you want to change the default sound, which I don't generally recommend. There are 3 ways to do it. If the app you're using has an in-app EQ, use that. For example, Spotify has one there. If you're using Apple Music, go to Settings and search for the equalizer. Second, use the headphones accommodations on your device. In Settings, search for headphone accommodations or go to Accessibility, then Audio Visual. Turn on headphone accommodations and you can choose whether you want a brighter tone, whether you want to focus more on voices, or to keep a balanced tone. I find that the brighter tone really does a great job of instrument separation and clarity, but there's a little bit too much sibilance for my taste. Finally, you can always use third-party apps. I use Boom EQ, for example, which for me only works with songs I own in Spotify, so this one's a real hit or miss. Now, a quick note on phone calls. Calls are fantastic, and while I don't usually use headphones without boom mics for phone calls, these are a clear exception. Moving on to features. The headline here for me is the Smart Assistant integration, but the on-ear detection and the connectivity with Apple devices also needs to be mentioned. In fact, I'll start with those. I'll start with the bad news, which is the connectivity. When I first used these, I loved that you could so easily connect them with any Apple device. And once it's associated to your account, it's associated with all your Apple devices. But actually switching between devices isn't as clean as I'd hoped. Sure, if I'm just using my iPad and my iPhone, this works just fine. It'll bounce around between those two without a problem. But with the computer, I have to manually reconnect it like I would any other Bluetooth headphones. Same with the Apple TV. It's still smooth about the way it does it, more so than other headphones, but it's not without its hiccups. And I often have to take the headphones off and put them back on for them to connect to whatever device I'm using. Which brings me to my next point, on-ear detection. This is still one of my favorite features because it works so incredibly well here. Better than with any other headphones. I've never had an error with this, and the detection is spot on. This is probably my favorite small quality of life feature with these, although you can turn it off in the settings if you want. By the way, all of these settings are controlled through the iOS settings screens, although they're not all in one place, and that is annoying. But the first place you'll want to look at is in the Bluetooth settings. Go to Settings, Bluetooth, and then tap the little I. Speaking of quality of life, let's talk about smart assistants. When you set these up, you're asked if you want to be able to say, "Hey Siri," to activate these, and whether you want text and call announcements to come through. And when a phone call or text message comes in, it announces who's calling or messaging, and in the case of text messages, it can start reading the text. It's not a feature I use very much, but it definitely makes for a great hands-off experience. With all that said, when it comes to features, except for the on-ear detection, everything else involves using Apple services and the ecosystem. The more you're into these, the more value you'll get. If you're not into them, then you really won't get all that much value. As for the battery, it's 20 hours. The thing is, you can't turn them off. And while Apple is great about power management, I have been caught by surprise with these in a bad way. First things first, if you're not wearing these, always put them in the sleeve. Don't just put them on your desk. Yeah, I had pretty good luck with that at first, but over time, I've also had bad luck, and keeping them on my desk overnight has at a few times left me with very depleted headphones. This is an area I thought was good, and it isn't quite as good as I thought. Finally, I want to touch on travel. Here's the big takeaway. I don't recommend these for travel. Traveling changed my opinion, by the way, in a few areas, mostly comfort and the active noise canceling. It also emphasized precisely how bad the case sleeve is that Apple gives you. First, as you can tell, it won't protect anything. It'll keep scratches from going on the body, but once I put it in my bag, the headband entirely exposed. So if you're wearing it instead, you walk around the airport like this, where do you put this? Okay, yeah, you're gonna put it in your bag, right? You can't exactly fold it, so it's gonna take up a bunch of room. So you're gonna take up a bunch of unnecessary space, and again, it doesn't protect anything, so it's not like you're keeping this for any reason other than you don't want it to suck up power, and wherever you're going to put it, you're probably gonna be leery because it doesn't protect anything. So yeah, pro tip, if you decide to buy these, consider buying a separate hard case, especially if you plan to travel with them. Now, if you plan to fly with them, my experience was pretty awful and I highly recommend against it. I mentioned before with these that the clamping force was a bit on the high side. The AirPods Max have this pivot hinge that'll distribute the overall clamping force between the top of your temple and like your jaw. On the ground, this was totally fine. But as soon as I was on the plane and we went past a few thousand feet, the pressure felt intense. So much so that I couldn't finish a flight with them. I had to take them off. I tried them on 2 flights, hoping that maybe the first time was a fluke. Maybe I had a sinus thing going on and I was getting sinus headaches and that's what was causing the issue. It wasn't. Lucky for me, I also happened to have another pair of headphones with me and I ended up just using those for the rest of the trip. This actually brings me to noise canceling. Unfortunately, one of my favorite things about these headphones, which is the size of the ear cups, which fit my entire ear and normally make these a pleasure to wear for hours, is what led to what I felt was ultimately a big flaw. Now, before I start with this, I'll tell you that when they're working as intended, these are the best noise canceling headphones I've experienced. Using these on planes made that even more obvious. But when I wore these during my flights, I noticed that if they weren't placed just right on my head, turning my head left or right would break the seal the ear cushions had against my head. This ended up letting in all the sound that I was trying to block. It pretty much negated most of the active noise canceling, and sure, it still reduced some of the noise, but it was annoying to turn my head 10 degrees in either direction and go from pretty much zero external noise to enough noise that I had to raise the volume. Eventually, I was able to position these just right so that didn't happen, but all that really did was increase my range of motion a little bit. Oh, and wearing glasses caused a similar issue, so I had to take them off for the best active noise canceling performance. Something a little stranger and more concerning, honestly, was that while on flights, especially when taking off, I kept hearing these pops. I'm pretty sure they were caused by the active noise canceling process, but they were extremely annoying and concerning and forced me to take them off until we reached cruising altitude. Again, I didn't experience these with any other headphones that I've flown with, and I have flown with a number of them. Between the issues with the case, the comfort, and the noise cancellation, I can't at all recommend these for anyone planning to use headphones during flights. They are far more trouble than they're worth. All right, so if you're looking for scores, here's where I'm at. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. I grade things on a 5-point scale. 1 means I hate it, 2 means I don't like it, 3 means it's okay, 4 means I like it, and 5 means I love it. So, in a nutshell, looks, 5 out of 5. These are some of the best looking headphones that I own, especially because they don't stick out as far as others. Build, again, 5 out of 5. Fantastic build quality all around. The magnetic ear cushions still impress me. Comfort, 5 out of 5 on the ground. I can wear them for hours without issue. 1 out of 5 in the air. I absolutely hate them in planes. Sound quality, 4 out of 5. I like them, though I wish they had a bit more body and better bass. As for EQing, I just don't recommend it. Not because they're that good, but because EQing them just sounds bad most of the time. Features, 5 out of 5. The Siri integration is great, and the ambient noise mode is second to none. Everything else, from a user perspective, top notch. Active noise canceling, 4.5 out of 5. It's the best noise canceling I've experienced, but it's easy to break the seal and ruin it. Calls, 5 out of 5. These are a pleasure to use for phone calls. Battery life, 2 out of 5. Look, 20 hours is okay, but not being able to shut these off means battery is still siphoned when they're not in use and they're not in their very terrible case thingy. User interaction design, 3 out of 5. Physically, these have an absolutely marvelous interaction design. But then trying to find all the features on iOS or in the settings in macOS, that's a total pain. Value for the money, 2 out of 5. At $550, I think they're overpriced. They're not bad. You'll get better sound from other high-end headphones in that price range. And they get another couple of points knocked off for the terrible case sleeve thing and the lack of proprietary auxiliary cable in the box. Overall score, 3.8 out of 5. That's still good, and I like them a lot, but never, ever for taking them on flights. I won't be doing that again. I used to tell friends that if I had to pick a pair of headphones from my collection, these would be it. Now, not so much. If you have any questions you want the answers to, hit me up in the comments below. And if you're wondering where I started with these, click over here, somewhere left or right, to watch my original review. With that, until next time.